We move on to sustainability, which I think we've touched on again as well. Sustainability policies dealing with such matters as the use of materials, on-site renewables, living roofs and so on are included in the UDP. But at the moment, they talk about encourage, so they don't really go far enough, and certainly not in relation to current government guidance. But how can they be reinforced further through greater integration in design policies? And certainly, Hugh raised the point earlier that they're indivisible from design. But does anyone have any sort of comment on the relationship between consideration of the appearance of a building, for example, and these other things that you might want to see in a building, and the operation of a building, if you like?
Paul Galloway, HOK. Just to take that one, apply particularly to historic buildings, there does need to be in the development of policy a far greater recognition, acknowledgement, the celebration of the performance of buildings in that context, and an understanding of that in relation to the interpretation of, say, conservation policy. Conservation policies at the moment in the UDP are largely devoid of explicit recognition of performance. City Council a year or so ago commendably organised a seminar at the RIBA, which there was a good deal of useful discussion, indication that cases were looked at each case on its merits. If that is the case, that's tremendous. It does need to be, though, clearly declared to be the position, and I think a very clear policy statement about understanding that called a green agenda insofar as alterations to existing buildings, particularly listed buildings. I think it's understood that there is an issue there. The new PPG, PPS may give greater credibility to that, but at the moment it is conspicuous by its absence.
So do you think there's any particular, and the balance perhaps between interventions to improve building performance and preservation of historic elements within a building? Do you have any point of view?
Well, again, I come back to wording, and wording matters a great deal if policy is going to be interpreted in a quite rigid way. If there is substantial flexibility in the interpretation application policy, then wording doesn't matter so much. But I think there is a tendency, not just here but in other boroughs, to interpret policy in a fairly rigid way, an increasingly rigid way. And in that context, it does require the wording for the relevant policies, emerging policies, to be got absolutely right. That's the point I made about unlisted buildings and conservation areas. But in relation to conservation of buildings, historic buildings, there does need to be a clear statement, commitment to understanding the importance, particularly of thermal performance of existing buildings, as well as their functional performance, in weighing in the balance alterations to those buildings. It's missing at the moment. We talk about it a good deal in terms of exchanges and discussions and debate with officers, consultees, but it does need to be there very much more clearly than it is at the moment. The new PPS may help us. We wait to see what's in that new PPS.